Good evening, Sector 001. I'm TJ Yasnak, your host for the Jupiter Station podcast. And tonight I have a guest who has written extensively for StarTrek.com. And tonight we're going to discuss IDIC, or Infinite Diversity and Infinite Combinations. Please welcome Heather Leigh Cameron. I think.
What's up?
Hi, Heather. Welcome.
How are you?
So far, so good. So, I'm going to give a little bit of background to our audience tonight. As soon as I come back into this realm, there we are. So I had reached out to Heather about a year or two ago about an article you had done on StarTrek.com about IDIC.
Yes. Yes, I had written that actually during lockdown in 2020 because I had this sense of dread that the world really didn't understand what it was like to live as a person with neurodivergencies in a situation like COVID because my God, it's suffocating. It's like really suffocating when your world gets to be that small. And then all you have is virtual and sometimes because I need eyes to be able to see cues, and you really can't see cues when you're limited to just online communication, and that's when you make mistakes.
Oh, I've been there, trust me. Um, so, to give you some background, I'm actually a parent of a neurodivergent child. And I guess by technical definition, I'm also neurodivergent because I have ADHD and varying levels of anxiety and
Welcome to the club.
PTSD. So we are among friends tonight. Um,
Wonderful.
but where the heck am I going? Man,
You're fine. You know what? You're fine. Let's just take a breath and be happy that we're here talking about this because, like, I don't think genuinely neurodivergent people get a lot of good attention. I mean, there's all these fake characters on TV, and that's great, but that's not reality.
right. I mean, for the longest time, before I actually had a child who was autistic, my only knowledge of what an autistic person looked like was Rain Man.
Mm.
And don't get me wrong, he did an amazing job, but that's not all of it.
No, because autism is a spectrum, right? It's one end of the other. And, I actually learned about, I used to be a caregiver for this little boy who was on the lower end of the spectrum, who was lower functioning. And, I did respite for him on certain weekends in my family's home and taught him a lot of life skills. And I loved it. It was amazing. But as I got older and realized that I didn't process the world the same way that I was expected to either, I'm like, okay, something's a little off. But I'm just going to keep living. But I didn't get diagnosed till I was like 2009 or 2010. So I was already an adult.
And that's probably one of the hardest times to be diagnosed because they say typically it's between like the first 3 years of life when it's easiest to diagnose. So anything after that becomes exponentially harder.
Well, I was diagnosed with something. It was just seen as a problem by the doctor. He actually told my mom, oh, you should put her in a group home at 3 years old because it's going to be difficult for you to raise her. But my mom, God bless my mom, Martha Lee, she said no. But, my biological father, I think that was around the time that he stopped loving me because he was an alcoholic, he was abusive. And I believe now that he was that way because I was different and he didn't know how to handle it. And I'm sure the alcohol had a factor into why. But, he's gone now. And I forgive him for that because he didn't understand. A lot of people don't understand. But all you can do is just keep living your life good and give people grace, even if they don't give you a shred.
And honestly, I'm glad you touched on that. A lot of people, um, after the fact, you look at them and say, "Oh my God!" Like you can almost go back and say, maybe they acted like that because they were neurodivergent too, and they didn't know how to handle it.
Hmm.
And sometimes a lot of people they self medicate, and unfortunately, alcohol is one of the ways they self medicate.
A lot of people act poorly or react poorly when they're facing people or situations or things that they don't easily understand. But we cannot hate them for reacting in fear to what is not easily understood. We have to give them grace. We have to even give ourselves grace and not think we're these terrible beings. Us neurodivergent people, we can't think we're these terrible beings just because people react to us a certain way. We don't control how others react to us. We can't do that. That's in our backpack, and that's a bad thing to have in the backpack. Like when I was getting counseling for my dad's cancer and dying and stuff, this counselor, he told me about a backpack that we carry around in life, and that we should only own our things and not carry around others' problems or assume that others' problems are our fault, because that will make our backpack too heavy.
I'm glad you mentioned the backpack. I actually have a therapist who referenced the backpack, and he said the exact same thing. He said, you can only carry so much in your backpack. If you keep taking all this stuff you find along the way, whether it's yours or not, that backpack's going to get heavy. So, only pack what you need.
Yeah, and it's like really not, it's not our fault we're designed this way, but it's what we do with it that really matters. It's what we choose to do with it. I mean, we can sit and be miserable and say, hey, we're different, we're losers, we're all this bad stuff. But you know what? Neurodivergency actually can teach us how to be gentler with ourselves, gentler with people, and gentler with our environments. And it can also teach people patience and love and compassion. And, it's like in the sanctuary cities, people did what they needed to survive, and so must we. But we don't have to survive in a way that makes ourselves and everybody miserable.
Well said. And that kind of brings us back to IDIC. Um, can you give us kind of a background of the article, and we can probably take it from there?
Yeah, just let me pull it up. All right. So, as I said, this was written in 2020, when I was having such a hard time connecting with virtual communities and trying to fit in, simply because I didn't have the social cues I needed to be able to really know what was appropriate and what was not appropriate, and just really having a hard time connecting with people without anything but typing and words to look at. But I was lonely. There was nothing going on. I had lost my job due to COVID, because I was working before COVID, and then all of a sudden it went away without an explanation. And there was nothing to do but be on the computer. And I was overwhelmed and a bit needy. And just my neediness rubbed some people the wrong way. And I found myself just thinking, oh my God, these people don't understand what it's like to be me, but maybe I should write it out and maybe help people understand. And, since then, I've taken a lot of personal responsibility in that there are things I could have done to make my presence and just my whole being tolerable for others, so that there wouldn't be so much discomfort. But I didn't see that then. I didn't have those tools, and I've since gotten them. But anyway,
I think we all learned something, whether we wanted to or not. We all learned something through COVID.
oh God, COVID was a hard thing, but I mean, you get through it and you learn things and you write things. This is not the only article I've actually written on neurodivergency, but it's the only one I have access to right now. But anyway, I just started with my childhood, and my mom actually had to tell me about the thing at 3 years old, because I don't have memories that go back that far. And I was also a little impulsive as a child. I actually ran away from a daycare I was in with my little brother, and I walked like 0.5 kilometers to the kindergarten one day, disrupted a lesson, went in there and said, oh, you are studying hazardous waste. And the teacher was like, oh my God, this girl was like 4 years old. She was like, I want this kid in my class next fall. And there's this amusement to being one of the smarter children in the room, but smarter as an intellectual, but not so smart as in social. And when you're encouraged to move forward with your intellectual smarts, you kind of suffer socially, because you get overloaded, and you really don't know how to identify with anybody. So you just don't. You retreat into writing. You retreat into any creative things you can, and just kind of prefer that over realities. Anyway, the article. I've always felt like I've stood apart from the normal. I was only accurately diagnosed after I got fired as a freaking dishwasher. It was like, when was it? A bunch of years ago, and I was struggling to do the tasks of a dishwasher. I wasn't quick enough, so my boss put on his freaking chef jacket and actually worked with me for a shift to try and get me better at being a dishwasher. I mean, who the hell's bad at being a dishwasher? It's the saddest thing in the world, and I was just trying so hard not to drown and lose the job because I was so happy to have a job after walking the streets and just thinking, why can't I get freaking hired? And because I had been to school and I couldn't even find paying work in the thing I had been to school for because I wasn't properly diagnosed then. I had very little social skills, and I picked a career then that made you need social skills. And it was just a lot of years of misdiagnosis and medication because I was on 3 different meds that literally just I still get forgetful sometimes, but that's what they did back in the 80s and 90s, you know? They just medicated and found it easier than to really explore why brains were the way they were. It was so much easier just to put people like me in the boxes. I mean, heck, even today, people like me are sometimes in group homes. And I mean, those who can't take care of themselves do need them. And I know a few people in group homes where they are doing quite well. But a lot of people, they just need supports and love and compassion and grace from society, and they're not getting it. And, you know, there was a lot of years where especially in the COVID years, when I was very much alone, that I saw my neurodivergency as a burden. And I was like, God, why did you give me this? God, this is hard. And I had a little bit of a mental breakdown on it for about 6 months because I was wondering, why did I get this? Because it's caused so much trouble for me. But, you know, I've come out of it. I'm realizing that I'm a gift and that it's not my fault if people don't see that. And, you know, like the actual story is I was actually in a little virtual Star Trek group that I found stimulating and exciting. And I'm not going to go into names and stuff, but I finally got to chat with this actor, and then this actor asked me why I wasn't like more involved in the career I was involved in, why I hadn't made more of a prominence or something along those lines. And he was just confused because I seemed to have such a passion as I was sharing with them, and really asked only why I was in freelancing when I seemed to have such a passion for the career, passion and talent and everything else I was sharing with him, but not just embracing. And I was really scared of telling the truth, so I just said there was no opportunities. But at that time in my life, like, there was a lack of opportunities, and I knew why. Like, I had taken my portfolios to various offices showing my articles, but, you know, I still lacked the social skills. I still struggled, and, you know, people are scared to hire those with disabilities even now. It's so difficult. I'm in a good place now. I'm working as a freelancer, but it's just so difficult. And, you know, people look at people like me and maybe you, I don't know, but they
Sometimes.
look at us and say, damn, that person's unmanageable. They have disability attached to their name. We can't hire them. We're going to have a hell of a time managing them.
And you know, something I noticed.
Yeah.
Hang on, my little security officer is coming for a visit. Say hi. Hi.
Oh, hello. I have to switch screens for a minute. Oh, hello.
You're disappearing. You're phasing out. There you are. So
Hi.
This is my youngest Star Trek fan, Roxanne.
Hello, Roxanne.
Your phaser's in the other room, but you can't be here right now. I'm
Oh,
talking.
that's
Okay.
okay. It's all right. I don't
She
mind
gets,
children. I
she
don't know
gets a
if I
little
can have.
carried away sometimes.
Huh?
I said she gets a little carried away sometimes. We could make the whole show about her if we let her.
Oh, that's okay. Children are children. I don't know if I can honestly have any of my own due to a medical condition, so I enjoy seeing children.
Oh, there you go. Roxanne, stop messing around in the conference room. Come on.
I like it.
Oh boy. But something I've noticed as an adult, I've had ADHD since I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And my security officer needs to take the turbo lift down to engineering right now. Go. But it didn't really click until I was much, much older. And I started like asking questions like, well, why is this happening? I got fired from a job when I was in my early 20s. And then, I had a pretty decent career in law enforcement for 6 something years. And all my supervisors would look at me and say, why are you trying so damn hard?
Well, why not?
This is how I was taught to work. Like, this is my work ethic. Well, yeah, but you're trying so hard. And then it kind of clicked. Yeah, I am kind of trying hard. Why? And come to find out, on top of the ADHD, I've also got an underlying condition of anxiety, which likes to kind of fan those ADHD flames. So I discussed it with like my clinician. He said, well, we don't have to medicate you, but it would definitely be beneficial because you've got this going on, and then this is kind of exacerbating it. So we tried that.
Mm-hmm.
So through this process, I kind of become a very big mental health advocate. I think that I look at a lot of the stuff going on around me, and it's a lot of mental health stuff, and nobody seems to want to address it. And I
Do you
think,
know it's like hard for us to own ourselves and own the crap we have to deal with? It is so hard. It's so wonderful and easy for us to take care of other people, but when it comes to ourselves, we're like, do we really have to do this?
yeah, exactly. And you look at being a parent of somebody who's autistic. He's Roxanne. Cool. It's really frustrating sometimes going out in public because as his parent, I know he doesn't mean to squeal or yell or growl or any number of things that a nonverbal child does.
He's just expressing himself.
Exactly.
Okay, can you have my phaser?
Like, this is why people tend to not get along, because everybody has different ways in which they communicate, some can't communicate in another way that others can, and some are limited in communication, like some children with disabilities, like some of them can only communicate in certain ways, and we are not as patient as we should be about that. We're like, oh my God, settle down, you're making a spectacle. But no, they're just trying to say, hey, I want to understand the world I'm in, and damn it, we should be patient about that.
And that is so very accurate. Like, my little guy, he'll do the squeaks and the growls, and he'll jump up and down and laugh, and he'll do hand flapping. I know what he means. And the school he's finally at, kind of understands that. So it's a very specific school that's designed specifically for autistic students. And he has made leaps and bounds since he started this school. And my wife, I am apparently the more open to conflict one of our relationship. She doesn't like conflict, so I get very defensive of Carson when people start kind of looking at him like, dude, what's wrong with your kid?
Oh yeah, conflict is you know what? It's going to happen when there's a special needs child or adult in the mix, because people are going to be like looking at them and not understanding and responding wrong. And it's like, if everybody just chilled out a minute and actually paid attention to what was going on and understood that not everybody sees the world the same. Not everybody sees the world the same, and everybody just needs to remember that and chill out and realize, hey, let's have a little more patience with each other, give each other a little more grace, and maybe people would fight less. Maybe there would be less wars, because I think grace is lacking both in terms of giving it and receiving it. And yeah.
Oh, you couldn't be more right. And that's the thing. Like, my wife is more soft spoken, kind of reserved. So when our child has his moment where he acts up, she's kind of more she steps back. I'm more of I step closer and say, if you take a picture, it'll last longer. All those things that we learned as kids. Like, hey, take a picture, it lasts longer. And that's probably I've done that with a few people, and they've kind of gotten that clue right away. So they're definitely receiving my social cue, like, oh, I overstepped. I'm sorry. Let's start that again. And I'm very, very protective as a dad of an autistic kid, and my full-time job, I'm a special needs school bus driver. So I transport my son.
So is my aunt. She's a bus aide. She works very hard.
Oh man. And honestly, I've been doing it for just a little bit more than 8 years. And if you told me 8 years ago that I would love this job as much as I do, I would have said. But I have so much fun doing my job. My students are probably some of the best kids that I've ever worked with in the world. And you look at these kids, and they are probably the closest thing you can see to absolutely innocent. Like, it is as pure as innocence can get with these kids.
They're innocent, yes, and it's wonderful, but the world treats them like they're freaking criminals just because they can't keep up and meet the expectations, and it's terrible. People with special needs, like whatever their age, they're not criminals. They're just trying to figure out how to live in the world, because my mom told me a long time ago, the world is not going to adapt to you. You have to adapt to the world. And, as people like us, we struggle to adapt in whatever way we know how or can figure out, because it can get so overwhelming. Sometimes the world's like,
and that routine with my son, with my students, I noticed that routine, if you miss it just that much, it throws the whole thing out of whack. And I'm probably one of the few drivers that I work with who advocates for my students. Like, we can't jam this routine up. We have to keep this routine as close to a routine as possible. And they're starting to understand it at work what I mean. I'm like, ow, Roxanne, that's your captain's chair is on my leg. But they're starting to understand what I mean. Like seriously, if you guys mess with the routine just this much, it's going to do this much damage, and they get it. So one step at a time is what I'm looking at. But I've got some really awesome people I work with who understand. The school that I drive for are exceptional educators. They are very helpful, both professionally and personally. So I think
we could do better with education. Sorry for interrupting. We could do better in terms of education, because I'm a journalist and an actor, and I as a journalist I read all this stuff about how the education system is not as graceful towards people with disabilities as it could be. I mean, I've been to elementary school, junior high, high school, college, online university, and I've taken accommodations for as much as I could. Like, having been to 6 different elementary schools, that's pretty darn hard to get accommodation there. At junior high with a teacher's aide who couldn't care less, and partial IEP in high school. And there wasn't really accommodation. Well, there were, I guess, a few accommodations in college, but even now, the accommodations in terms of educational opportunities for people with disabilities, like, it's not just having them there, it's helping people with disabilities feel unafraid to embrace them. Because I actually have friends who have disabilities, like, and we hang out and we talk on Discord and play Roblox, and they've told me, hey, yeah, I'm in school, but I'm not going to take those accommodations, even though you're telling me they exist, because I'm scared. I'm scared of getting stigmatized. I'm scared of like accepting my disability into my life simply because I know what that might mean and the problems it might cause me. People are scared to embrace who they are simply because of the way of society, simply because of how society just paints disability. If that
I mean,
makes sense.
let's take a look at that. As far as how society paints it, let's look at probably the biggest way that society looks at it is probably through the lens of a camera. So, TV, movies, things like that. Like I said, a lot of people when they think of neurodivergent people, they think of Rain Man. But now we have the
That
good
girl
doctor.
on the pit, Melissa King, Dr. Mel King, that girl on the pit. Please don't bring up The Good Doctor. I hate that show.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan of it either. Hi. Oh, you're in the communications department now. Okay, here, can you sit at the comm station while we do
Yeah.
this? Perfect.
Like, I read online when I was reading about The Good Doctor and why he acted the way he acted as the character of Sean. He actually did research on how to
You should be in my pocket.
be neurodivergent. Like, it's like as if it was a costume to put on and off. And I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. I just hate the whole thing because we can't take off who we are like a costume.
Yeah, I mean it's all well and good that he can, but we wake up and go to sleep with that.
Yeah.
The
And
only
then,
time we can take the costume off is when our eyes are closed and we're dreaming.
yeah. And like Dr. King in the pit, actually, she's actually a more accurate representation because sometimes you can mask and do your job, and other times you just need a moment to take a break. And that's a little better. But it would be so much better if somebody with a neurodivergency actually played a neurodivergent character on TV.
And that's the thing. Like there have been times because when I was in law enforcement, I just recently retired from the fire service in February. So I've been around a lot of jobs that require a lot of instantaneous, high intensity thought, and I'm lucky that with the adrenaline allowed my brain and my body to perform at the same speed.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, there are some times when you get kind of like backed into a corner and everything is falling apart around you, and now you're like, okay, what am I going to do? And then you have to kind of think on your feet. And I really felt for that character on the pit because that was me in a nutshell. Like I had a medical I responded to when I was working in casino security, and when everything was all done, I just sat, took a deep breath, I breathed out, and I started bawling like just that quick out of nowhere. And I ended up asking one of my chain of command at the firehouse, like, well, why is this happening? And she said, well, think about it. Like when there's a thunderstorm at home and your power goes out, well, what happens? I said, like whatever that guy was watching on TV gets shut off, and yeah, and everything shuts off. She said, okay. And then when the thunderstorm's done and you pop the breaker, what happens? I said, like my TV and the surround sound and everything else comes flying back on, and it's all noisy and loud. She said, so think about that. Like your body naturally shut off all of its emotions to deal with this one thing. You're
Yeah,
done.
and the brain
You're dealing with it. You've popped the breaker, and everything that was left on before the breaker shut off comes back on at the same time. And that's
like the brain literally just kind of went tired. That's what happens when you get overstimulated. It goes tired. Like I remember the scene, like I think it was Dr. Langdon was telling Dr. King, yeah, you need a moment, take a break.
I did actually see that. That was actually the scene I was looking at. I'm like, yes, that is 100% what I'm thinking. Like, all hell is breaking loose inside my head, and all I needed was one person to say, you know, it's okay. Just take a deep breath,
Yeah.
let yourself relax, and get yourself back on an even keel, and it'll be okay.
I
And
mean, yeah. I mean, Langdon had his own issues, but I feel bad for him, and I don't think we have the whole story. And I hope he and King are good together. I like them because he's like he's what's it called, running interference for someone who actually needs it, and that's great.
and that's very necessary for people who are in the working world or not the working world, who are neurodivergent. They need that person to help run interference for them, because you can only process so much, and if you get
Yes.
more than you're able to process, it's going to throw you for a loop too. So
Yeah.
that's
Like
definitely.
typical brains can only process so much at a time. Neurotypical brains, well, neurodivergent brains, blah, half of that maybe.
Yeah, some can process more, some can process less, but that's the thing. That's the differences.
I just, I find as we're talking about the pit, I find myself a little disappointed in Star Trek Discovery because I know they had a neurodivergent character in Tilly, but they really didn't show anyone doing actual interference for her. And I wish we could have seen that pit-like scene in Star Trek Discovery, honestly. It would have been very interesting instead of Saru just saying, "Oh, hey, be my first officer, take that responsibility, you'll do great." Like, I would have liked to see Tilly actually get overwhelmed and have someone say, "Hey, you need a break. Let's have a chill. Let's have a cuddle with its service
Yeah,
dog
I
or
mean,
whatever."
and I think I may have missed that on Discovery, was, you know, probably because I thought Tilly was so much like me, I didn't even process it as she was neurodivergent, because for a while I didn't think I was. But now that you mention it, yeah, I can kind of see that. And that monkey wrench that Saru threw at her of, hey, be my executive officer, be my number one. That would have thrown a huge monkey wrench at somebody who was neurodivergent. They're like,
Because it's not their routine. They're
I'm sorry,
like, "Oh,
you
we're
want me to
having more."
what? Like, you want me to what? You want me to sit over there next to you?
Yeah.
Why? Like, that's a lot. That's a lot to process. Like, why would you do that? And it would just completely throw a monkey wrench in their thought process.
And
So
yeah.
they got it, and they didn't at the same time. Like, I've had a ton of discovery conversations on this show, and they've hit the mark on a lot of stuff, and they've missed it by that much on others. Like
Yeah.
the thought was there, the intention was there, but they just didn't explore it quite as much as they could have.
Like in the next generation, they had absolutely no problem with exploring Data's neurodivergency because he was an android. He did not fit in with his human peers. He very much stood out, but they showed his process of working to gain more humanity. And I love that. And then they got Julian in Deep Space Nine. And even though he was an augment, he was still neurodivergent, and you could freaking tell. You could literally freaking tell with the way he struggled to just grab onto social cues and fit in socially. You could freaking tell, but they didn't really explore that. They could have had Garrick do interference for him. I think they tried, but that kind of just fell away.
That turned into the Julian and Garrick ship.
Well,
It went a completely different direction than they intended.
like they could have I mean, I get they couldn't go romantically in that era because what was it, Rick Berman wouldn't allow it or something, but they still
No,
could have shown a neurodivergent Julian having a friend in Garrick who was willing to run interference for him and help him stop being so socially awkward. Because, I mean, there was a scene when Julian and Miles O'Brien were just really struggling to connect with each other, but they didn't really show afterwards. Like, they should have had a conversation and Julian say, "Hey, I'm neurodivergent. Just have a little patience and grace with me. Oh, they just show them automatically being friends, and they didn't show the struggle that it is for neurotypicals and neurodivergents to become friends and maintain a friendship. Am I
Right.
blowing your brain?
That,
I think I'm blowing your brain.
what is it? The ADHD brains and neurodivergent brains in general. We have this. Oh, I forget what the actual psychological name for it is, but if it's not directly in front of your face every hour of every day, you completely forget about it. And that's what it's like with a lot of my friends. Like if they're not directly in my face every single solitary day, it could be a couple days, it could be a week before I get back to them. But I think in a lot of ways, a lot of my friends realize that, and the world is just so busy as it is anyway that people just kind of
Yeah.
they communicate when they can.
But in terms especially of Julian and Garrick, they had lunch together at least once a week, if not more. We didn't see it on screen. And past tense, I mean, I know what past tense was about, but it really could have just quirked up a bit and really shown Julian's neurodivergency through like the struggle it was for him to be able to sleep in the street, to sleep in dirty clothes, to just sleep in a situation he wasn't comfortable with, instead of just having a little conversation with Cisco about sanctuary cities. Julian could have personally identified with that.
This is true. But in the world of Star Trek, do you know who the biggest sleeper as far as neurodivergence is?
I'm not.
Barkley.
Yeah. Poor guy. Oh my God. They were so
But
mean to him. And I actually wrote a piece on that.
actually, I think I remember reading that. But
Yeah, the
basically,
website died. So, but I saved it.
and that's the thing. Like Barkley, I think they started out that was like the whole where they miss and where they hit, and I think they started out on a good foot. They wanted to show somebody who was socially awkward, had social anxiety or generalized anxiety disorder, and it just didn't pan out quite like they wanted to. It kind of took off in a direction where Barkley became a joke. It's like, oh, here comes Barkley. And then,
Yeah.
Captain Picard completely forgetting it was a nickname. It's like, oh, very well, Mr. Broccoli. And everyone's like, what?
Like they really made
Oh,
him
I
feel
said it.
like he was more of a burden than a blessing. And that's what bothered me the most. I just wish
Until
they would have
Voyager,
given
and
him
then
respect.
save the world.
Well, I wish they would have given him more respect and taught him that it was okay to respect himself as he was. That's a problem, though. We don't, people don't really teach us as they are teaching us how to survive in the world, that they don't really teach us that it's okay to respect ourselves and actually love ourselves as we are. They say we have to go into the world and work to live in it, but what of ourselves are we giving away in the process in order to just meet the expectations of the world? We really shouldn't have to give anything away.
And that's true too. I felt from like the law enforcement and fire EMS level that I was giving away my humanity just to do a job. Like I felt like I had to turn off my humanity every time I went somewhere because I had to be in this box. I had to play a certain role. I had to do a certain job. And it just got to a point where I couldn't stay in that box anymore. I have to be human. I have to be able to express myself. And unfortunately, my filter's not going to work. So, Chief, it's time for me to step down. And it was a very hard decision for me to make because that became part of my identity for the longest time. I'd introduce myself. Hi, I'm TJ. I'm a firefighter. Hi, I'm TJ. I'm an EMT. That became part of my identity to the point where, my brain is saying, hey, we can't do this anymore. Like you're driving yourself crazy. We can't do this anymore. And my brain's like, what do you mean we can't do this anymore? This is what we know. And
you built a world. You were world building in order to survive.
and that's the thing. Like I look at how I grew up. I was a very silent kid. I kind of stuck to myself. I had a very small circle of friends, and that was just what was normal. And then, I graduated high school. I went to college. The college I went to was a military college, and I kind of had like a military-ish background because my dad was, military minded. So it was something I could kind of focus on. And then, I kind of like made myself fit. And I fit and I didn't at the same time. I'm still friends with every single one of those people that I started college with. But we're all so older. We realize now, hey, you were a little weird, but I've known you for so long that you're not weird. Like, I know you, which is good. But I think, they had to get to that point. Like, I was around them 24 hours a day for 9 months. So they had to get used to me. And
Well,
that's
if I
that's
may say, if I may say, it's nice that you had friends that were able to get used to. A lot of people can't. Like in my life, a lot of people, they expected me to be a certain way for them. They expected me to just do what they wish and not really have a right to choice. And if I chose to feel or want different things than them, they would just kind of drift away because I wasn't meeting their expectations and I couldn't do it as fast or as uniformly as they wanted to. And, we need to be more gracious to each other and that not everybody can meet everybody's expectations, but we can still all get along.
Come on, you're not eating your sandwich.
absolutely. And it's the classic. If I knew then what I know now, would it be a different ballgame? I look at mental health from a completely different standpoint now than I did even 5 years ago. COVID hit and the school buses stopped running. I got nervous, and my kids are home now. I'm like, oh, you're still here. And I became the IT guy. On paper, it was a great idea. I said, oh, great. This is just like Wesley doing school on the enterprise. This is going to be awesome. Nope. Nope. Like, my kids would come up to me like, Dad, computer's broken again. Dad, is there something wrong with the Wi-Fi? Dad, I need the Wi-Fi password. This is a different computer. Dad, I can't connect. Can you help? Dad, my teacher said I have to upload this. Oh. I called the public school system's IT department. I said, look, I'm at my wit's end. I need some backup. What do I do? And it was a great idea on paper. And then in practice, it was completely different than what I expected.
I'm almost reminded as you speak about how like reality is different on paper than it is in actual reality. I'm almost thinking about Gil Grissom from CSI, if you've ever heard of that.
Oh, absolutely. Gil honestly is one of my favorite characters in that show.
Like he was suddenly thrust into a situation where he had to be the leader after one of his new CSIs got killed and that boss was held responsible for that. And he thought it would be a good idea on paper, but he was never good at actually the paperwork of it. He was just interested in the science, and that got him into a lot of crap with superiors simply because he couldn't be what he was expected to be. He just wanted to do certain things to make the role comfortable for himself, just like you were talking about with your, what was it again? My memory just died.
Yeah, mine
The
too.
computer thing. The computer thing with your kids.
I was dad the IT guru because it was like remote learning.
Like you thought it would be great on paper. You were just like, okay, I'm going to take on this role like Gil did. He's like, okay, I don't really have a choice here, so I'm just going to take on this role and just dedicate myself to science anyway and just have fun with it. But he literally just realized, oh, there's a lot more to taking on this role than I realized. And he ended up pissing a lot of people off, and it took him a long time. It literally took him a long time to understand that he needed to be a little bit of an administrator, be a bit of a boss, be less of everyone's friend, and stop obsessing over the science and really focus on responsibilities that he wasn't quite used to. I mean, it's not a bad thing to realize those things. It just takes some a little bit longer.
Pretty much. Well, Heather, I hate to cut this short, but there's
Yes.
a lot more to neurodivergence and IDIC than I had planned on.
Oh, we could talk more. I don't care. I have no
Oh,
plans.
we can definitely make this a two-parter later, I'm sure. But thank you for meeting with us.
Yes.
I'm gonna talk to engineering about phasing that.
Do you
Really
need a
bothers-
picture I can take these off, or do you want them on?
Oh no, you're good either way. It's fine. I'll probably just bogart something off of your Facebook page or something and pop that in. But I appreciate you coming by to visit. We had a great chat. I definitely wish that more people could take a look at neurodivergence the way that you and I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really hope this comes out soon because I've been speaking about it so much lately that the message is important. We need to learn to love each other a little more, but we need to understand each other a little more, and that's really what I'm hoping to accomplish with this. Giving people opportunity to understand what they don't so they can learn to love what they might never have thought possible to love.
Absolutely. I'll probably get this out in the next couple of days. It just takes me like a day or so to do some post production, a little
Yeah,
bit of editing, and then off to YouTube and the audio platforms.
awesome. Is there
Awesome.
any other final questions before you run away?
No, but it'll probably happen after I turn the cameras off, and I've got your email and I've got your
Yeah.
messenger. So if it pops up, I'll send you a message.
Yeah, I think we should just focus on loving each other a little more as we are, and especially loving ourselves as we are, and there should be no shame associated with that anyway.
Amen. Well, I will talk to you later. Thanks for stopping by.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I've never done this before, so this was fun.
Definitely. We should do it again. I'll talk to you later.
Yes. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Hello, Sector 001. It's me, TJ Yesnak, host of the Jupiter Station podcast, coming to you today with a very special request. We here at Jupiter Station do our best to bring you the kind of Star Trek podcast you've come to expect. However, due to technical limitations, we are in need of your support. We need new equipment, and to be able to fund our support services, without viewer support that may not be possible. We've set up a Patreon membership page. With multiple membership plans, there's a tier to fit anyone's budget. Just go to patreon.com/Jupiter Station Podcast for more information and to sign up today. Thank you all in advance.
Here at Jupiter Station, we've partnered with Purple Carrot to bring you the best in vegan foods. From meal kits and ready-to-eat foods to vegan grocery offerings, Purple Carrot has the healthy options you're looking for. Go to purplecarrot.com and use promo code TJ30 to get 30% off your order today.